Welcome to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, online at fppradio.com. So I've got a couple of interesting news stories today, one of which is debunking the whole concept of buy local. And I also have a story about the latest Edward Snowden revelations, and that's the one that we're going to start the show with. The story comes from TechCrunch.com. It's a couple days old, but it's still very relevant, and I think it's a news story that has been underreported, quite frankly. It says, over the weekend, that meaning last weekend, German news outlet Spiegel published a story about the NSA's ability to crack encrypted forms of communication, exposing the agency's routine interception of SSL. That's the secured something. I don't know what it stands for. I just know that it's some secure stuff. So if you're on a website and it instead of just having HTTP : / if it has the HTTPS, then that's got the SSL certificate, and that's supposed to be secure internet. Well, apparently the NSA can crack SSL, which is used by web servers, this from the article, which is used by web servers to transmit sensitive information. The report also exposed the fact that the agency has the ability to decrypt a virtual private network. Uh-oh, that is not good right there, because people have been told that VPNs will protect them from NSA spying and their ISP being able to know what they're doing. But apparently, if the NSA can crack a VPN, then VPNs might not be all that we have been promised. The article here continues. It says, but perhaps more significantly, the revelations culled from the trove of documents leaked by Edward Snowden show the forms of encryption the NSA struggled to break, or at least at the time of the document, or rather at the time that the documents were created and released in 2012. That list includes PGP, which is pretty good protection. That's what it stands for. That's not me telling you that I think PGP is pretty good. That's actually what the letters PGP stand for. Also on the list is Tor, which is the Onion router, CSpace, OTR, and ZRTP, which are three that I have never heard of before. The article continues. It says, the combination of good news and bad news garnered contradictory coverage, with The Verge highlighting the networks the NSA can't break, and Slashdot leading with a headline that says, Snowden documents show how well NSA codebreakers can pry. Overall, the report was reassuring. Many of the forms of added encryption measures those concerned about security have taken in the past 18 months since the Snowden documents became public are effective. For example, the documents showed that communications protected by ZRTP, the type of encryption Red Phone uses, actually blocks the NSA. And Red Phone is something that I am not familiar with. I don't think I've ever heard of. But one of the developers of Red Phone told Spiegel, it's satisfying to know that the NSA considers encrypted communication from our apps to be truly opaque. Although the scope of the interceptions on SSL and VPN connections are concerning, many assumed the agency possessed this capability previously. The trove released by Spiegel shows the specific tools the agency used to go about this. The Spiegel report has prompted backlash in the information security community, with some saying it sensationalizes the NSA's ability to access information on VPN connections. According to Spiegel, the NSA operates, quote, a large-scale VPN exploitation project to crack large numbers of connections, allowing it to intercept data inside the VPN, including, for example, the Greek government's use of a VPN. This is very concerning, considering the high number of companies and governments that utilize VPNs to allow users to access their network anywhere in the world. But No Hats, a security specialist blog, says if you properly configure your VPN, you're not affected. So maybe this isn't as bad as I first thought. Because, again, people are told VPNs will protect you from snooping and spying, but, there's documents saying, well, nah, maybe not. And now they're saying, well, if you do it properly, then it will. So it's one of those things. I don't really know anymore whether or not a VPN actually does what a VPN says that it's going to do, because how do I know? Maybe I think I'm doing it properly because I followed all of the steps that were given to me, but something somewhere along the line isn't working because they didn't tell me all of the proper steps. Does that make any sense? Sort of like on some of these refund things, the Melon rebate, they'll have a little box at the bottom that says, make sure you check this box to get your refund. And if you don't check the box, then you don't ever get your refund. Or, you accidentally cross something into the area that says, do not write in this box. Which, do you remember that Simpsons episode where Lisa wanted to be in the Miss Springfield pageant? And so, Homer enters her into the child beauty pageant, and there was a little box that says, do not write in this box, and he put okay, and so he was then disqualified, or Lisa was disqualified because Homer wrote okay in the box that said don't write in this box. So maybe it's kind of something like that. I really don't know. The article here continues. It says, according to the blog's comprehensive breakdown of the NSA slides that Spiegel based its report on, properly configured IPsec-based VPNs are okay. Another alarming statistic from the article is the number of HTTPS connections, the type of secure connections used by sites like Facebook, that the agency intercepts. One document showed that by late 2012, the NSA was cracking 10 million such connections a day. 10 million per day. And yes, I realize that, there's 300 million people in the U.S. and 10 million connections per day. And you figure, the average person goes on the internet for a certain amount of time. So, it's a small amount of secure connections that are being cracked when you look at it statistically. But it's still, that's a lot of connections that are being cracked. 10 million per day. The article here continues. It says, much of the Spiegel article discusses a conflict of interest that the NSA faces. It is charged with recommending security standards, yet it is constantly attempting to break the very security standards it recommends. Yes, you heard that. They recommend security standards, then they break them. There's more when we come back on Peace, Love, Liberty Radio. There's more when we come back on Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, online at fppradio.com. You can support FPP Radio by joining the Fans program. Fans are friends, allies, and numerous supporters. Fans help FPP afford to produce more original content. You can join the Fans program for as little as $3 per month or any amount of Bitcoin per month, thanks to the recurring payment options provided by Coinbase. To learn more or to join the Fans program, visit fans.fppradio.com. That's fans.fppradio.com. Hi, I'm Darryl W. Perry, and I need your help to take Peace, Love, Liberty Radio on the road. In the spirit of Motorhome Diaries and Liberty on Tour, I intend to take the message of peace, love, and liberty on the road. I intend to leave New Hampshire at the conclusion of the New Hampshire Liberty Forum and return at the beginning of PorkFest. During the 104-day trip, I'll be visiting at least 10 cities across the country, speaking to people about the ideas of peace, love, and liberty, while continuing to produce daily liberty media. Pensacola, Florida, Austin, Texas, Sedona, Arizona, and Denver, Colorado are already on the map. If you have a college group, a local Liberty on the Rocks, or other Liberty meetup that you'd like me to visit, you can possibly add your event to my calendar. To find out more about the tour or to donate, visit tour.fppradio.com. That's tour.fppradio.com. Welcome back to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio. Online at fppradio.com. Now, before I continue with the article here from TechCrunch, I want to make sure that I tell you about something that I spent a lot of time on. I spent the better part of New Year's Day revamping the online Bitcoin shop at shop.fppradio.com and shop.fpp.cc. So now, instead of having all of the products listed and you can buy one product at a time with Bitcoin, there's now an actual, shopping e-commerce thing there. So you can buy multiple copies of books and, multiple copies of various books at the same time. And there's something really cool. If you want to purchase, bulk copies of a book, you now get a discount. So if you buy 10 or more copies of any book, then you save 30% plus an additional 5% when you check out. So, there's already the 5% discount on everything. So if you buy bulk copies, then you get 30% plus an additional 5%. And no, that doesn't equal 35% because you're doing, percentages of percentages. But still, it's an additional 5%, whatever you order. The new and improved Bitcoin shop at shop.fppradio.com or shop.fpp.cc. And the only way that you can buy directly from me is with Bitcoin. If you wish to use, like regular paper dollars, well, you can't do that online anyway. But, you can still buy the books that I've published through Amazon, and there is the Amazon shopping iframe built into the main page. The Bitcoin store, revamped, spent a lot of time on it because there were some problems. So I had to import all of the products and then troubleshoot. And I was actually able to, this is kind of funny, I was able this morning, between, making phone calls for my job, I was able to do a web search and find out, other people were having the same problem. So what I had to do was deactivate the e-commerce site and then reactivate, or the plugin, rather, deactivate the plugin for the website and then reactivate the plugin. And now, all of a sudden, for some weird random reason, it works. I'm glad it works. And, like I said, you can now buy multiple copies of books instead of having to do one at a time. Shop.fpp.cc, shop.fppradio.com. So, back to the story here from TechCrunch about the latest revelations from documents released by Edward Snowden. The article from TechCrunch writes, "At first glance, these claims seem to point to the very hypocrisy we are reminded of time and again as more is exposed about the American surveillance state. Privacy advocates widely agree that communications vulnerable to law enforcement agencies are also at risk for all kinds of cyber threats, from criminals attempting to steal identities to hacks of foreign governments. It seems counterintuitive that the NSA would be responsible for creating standards it only wants to break, especially when American law enforcement agencies have a history of wanting communications to be less secure to make accessing information easier." But in a blog post criticizing Spiegel's report, calling it activist nonsense, cybersecurity expert Robert Graham says the NSA is trying to break the standards it sets, and that's actually a good thing. He writes, you secure things by trying to break them. And yeah, you can't deny with that statement, because you want to make sure if I can't break into it, then chances are somebody else won't be able to either. But you don't set a standard that you're going to be able to break into. And that, at least based on the knowledge that I have, that seems to be what the NSA is doing, is they're setting the standard at somewhere that they know they can crack, but they're hoping that other people can't. The article concludes, it says, the Spiegel story leaked a large number of documents containing very specific information about the NSA's techniques a year and a half after The Guardian and Washington Post first published the documents. The report reignited calls on social media for the full release of the Snowden documents. If anything, the report served as a reminder that we likely have years of new exposures to come about America's surveillance practices. And I agree that the documents, they should just be uploaded on a website somewhere, or multiple websites, some sort of peer-to-peer sort of thing. That way, if the feds wind up getting their panties in a bunch, which I know they will if somebody puts all of them in one place, but they should be put out and then crowdsourced, sort of like how WikiLeaks started, where they would just post stuff and then people would go and look and, ooh, hey, here's this interesting thing here, and then people would go and read the article or the PDF or whatever it was because somebody else figured out what the interesting thing was. So I agree, it should all be made public, and let people crowdsource it. That's my 2 cents anyway on the rather large cache of documents from Edward Snowden. The other article that I have this week, it debunks the claim that buy local is great for the economy. The article comes from realclearmarkets.com, and it's written by Brian Brinberg and Chris Horst, two people I have never heard of, but I have read some stuff from Real Clear Markets, and they take a slightly different approach at things than I do on some stuff, but this overall is a good article. So I figured I would share the article with you. Coca-Cola's Share a Coke campaign is the latest effort by multinational corporations to de-emphasize their global reach. By replacing the logo on its cans with colloquialisms and common names in markets it serves, one of the world's most recognizable brands is hoping to look and feel a bit more local. Coke's marketing strategy is just one example of companies responding to growing public sentiment that buying local is synonymous with doing good. Indeed, more than 150 groups representing more than 30,000 U.S. businesses are promoting buy local campaigns with slogans like, "Don't buy from strangers, buy from neighbors." Of course, suspicion of foreign goods is nothing new. Phrases like "made in China" have long been associated with poor quality, but when did shunning foreign-made products become a matter of conscience? Now, before I continue with the article, I just want to put sort of my 2 cents on the whole buy local thing, and it comes down to this. How local do you want to go? Do you only want to buy from places in your town? If so, will you shun any business that imports from a neighboring town? Think about that for a second. And we'll come back in just a moment. Peace, love, Liberty Radio.
Hi, I'm Darryl W. Perry, and I need your help to take Peace, Love, Liberty Radio on the road. In the spirit of Motorhome Diaries and Liberty on Tour, I intend to take the message of peace, love, and liberty on the road. I intend to leave New Hampshire at the conclusion of the New Hampshire Liberty Forum and return at the beginning of PorkFest. During the 104-day trip, I'll be visiting at least 10 cities across the country, speaking to people about the ideas of peace, love, and liberty, while continuing to produce daily Liberty media. Pensacola, Florida, Austin, Texas, Sedona, Arizona, and Denver, Colorado are already on the map. If you have a college group, a local Liberty on the Rocks, or other Liberty meetup that you'd like me to visit, you can possibly add your event to my calendar. To find out more about the tour or to donate, visit tour.fppradio.com. That's tour.fppradio.com. During the 2013 Porcupine Freedom Festival, Davy Barker presented an idea for a renegade psychological experiment. Since then, he has refined his idea and put his plan and research into writing. He explains, "We aim to show the world beyond a shadow of a doubt that power corrupts absolutely and corrupt authority deserves no obedience." Authoritarian Sociopathy is available from Amazon.com and all major bookstores.
Welcome back to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio. Online at fppradio.com. So, in the last segment, I asked the question, if you buy into the concept of buy local, how local do you go? Do you go to only purchasing products that were made within your community? And if you do, then what do you consider to be your community? Do you consider it to be the city or town that you live in? Do you consider it to be the county that you live in? Do you consider it to be the state that you live in? And if so, on each one of those things, imagine that you live half a mile from the border of your town, city, county, state, or even the country where you live. Are not the people that live half a mile the other direction across that border, are they not just as local as the people that live half a mile the other way from you? Or even, I would dare say that they are more local than the people that live 20 miles the opposite direction of where you live. So when you get down and you start thinking about buy local, and how local do you go, then you have to also think about products that maybe can't be made, manufactured, grown, produced, whatever, in that little circle that you're putting yourself in. For example, coffee does not grow really well in New Hampshire. So if somebody was to say, I am only going to buy locally produced products. Well, think about everything that they would have to give up. They would have to give up coffee. And this is just if they do I'm considering buy local to be the entire state. Even though Massachusetts, Vermont, and Maine are probably closer to them than the furthest reaches of the state, unless they live up in North Country, and then they're closer to Canada than Massachusetts. But I digress. So they're let's again take, for example, somebody says, I'm only going to buy things produced in New Hampshire. Then they have to give up coffee. Most tropical fruits, unless there might be a greenhouse somewhere in New Hampshire that's growing oranges, peaches, bananas. So that's all gone. They can certainly have beef. There are vegetables that they could eat. Cotton, can't have any cotton clothing. You can wear wool, possibly polyester. And I don't know necessarily if are even any clothing manufacturers that produce clothes in New Hampshire. But I know that based on the geography and whatnot, you can have sheep in New Hampshire. That's not a problem. You can have a manufacturing plant that produces polyester, that's not a problem, but the weather is not really contingent for cotton. So there are a lot of things that you limit yourself to when you do this. I'm only going to buy local. And if you're going to only buy local, then why not break it down even more locally and say that you're only going to consume products and use products that you make yourself? Because that's really local, right? Is I'm only going to do what I can do. I'm only going to use what I can make. That's the ultimate buy local. And that is bad economics. The article here from Real Clear Markets continues. The truth is, the growth of international trade over the past 30 years has sparked a revolution in the living standards for hundreds of millions of people around the world. Stigmatizing global trade threatens to undo hard-won gains. History and research show that as trade increases, surprise, surprise, poverty decreases. And China is a prime example. Since 1978, when the country opened to foreign investment, China has grown to become the world's largest trader, measured by imports and exports. The results have been striking. In 2012 alone, average factory wages in China rose 14%. In manufacturing specifically, worker wages have increased 71% since 2008. Over the last 30 years, Chinese families living in extreme poverty dropped from 84% to under 10%. To put that in perspective, 680 million Chinese people, over twice the entire population of the United States, are no longer living on the edge of catastrophe and dying from preventable problems like diarrhea and malnutrition. China is just one example. A study by Yale University and the Brookings Institute finds that in just 30 years, from 1981 to 2011, the world's population living below the extreme poverty line plummeted from 52% to 15%. The study credits the rise of globalization and capitalism as prime drivers of the decline in poverty, noting that countries that have displayed the greatest successes have been most engaged in the global economy. The stress many Americans feel about buying products made abroad is rooted in bad economics, and we're not the first generation to make this mistake. Prior to the late 18th century, most Western economies believed that one country's economic gains had to be another country's loss. Trade wasn't viewed as mutually beneficial to the seller and buyer. Countries thought they gained economic power by encouraging exports and discouraging imports. Today, champions of the buy local movement often follow the same faulty economic reasoning. Nobody wins unless somebody loses, and I'd rather have the person who looks like me, lives by me, and talks like me win, so I'm going to buy from him. What's sad about this thinking isn't just that it draws arbitrary moral distinctions between humans based on physical traits and locations, but it undermines the openness to trade and commercial interaction that has made so many people better off. Complaints that overseas workers are stealing jobs are short-sighted and unfair. Why is someone less deserving of work simply because he's willing to do it for $2 an hour instead of $20? Why does it matter if his name is Jin instead of Jim? Is the humanity of a worker in Beijing of less worth than the humanity of a worker in Cleveland? To be sure, there is nothing wrong with buying local. Indeed, there is something beautiful about watching a local craftsman labor over furniture or a farmer harvesting crops, but there is simply no reason to stress when the furniture in your home or the food on your plate has to travel across national borders to reach you. And I would even say when the food has to cross state borders or town borders or county borders. It makes no difference in the long run, but it's actually beneficial to the global economy when goods do cross borders. And there's the old saying, if goods don't cross borders, armies will. This has been Peace, Love, Liberty Radio. Don't forget, every Wednesday I do the Ask Me Anything, where you can send me any question, ama@fppradio.com.